war is on in Europe as Ukrainians wake up to air raid sirens, explosions, and gunfire.
I was really shocked waking up on February 24th, realizing that this is what's happening. Plus, I'll never forget that day.
Flip side of that, of course, is that it sometimes means more work for the people who are there.
Overnight, a Russian missile slammed into this building next to a television tower in the capital of Kyiv.
Trey was doing a stellar job while he was there with Pierre.
Trey and I have worked together a few times. Incredible journalist. I will tell any story.
I was really, really tired at the beginning of the war. Like, I was on all the time. When I heard that he was coming, I was like, great, we can split shifts. This is gonna allow us to keep going. Because you also don't want to burn out.
Pierre was sort of running the Kyiv bureau in a sense. He was working and filming non-stop.
I shared with them all of the security warnings that I was receiving at the Pentagon so that Pierre had all of the information to keep his team safe.
You've got a lot of practical things to think about. If the power goes out, how are we going to transmit? Do we have fuel? Do we have water?
He was actually there for 50 days, non-stop. He used to send me pictures nearly every day of what he was doing and what was going on. He was always honest with me about the risks and things that happened, like when Brent Renaud was killed.
Brett Renaud. He was a documentary filmmaker who worked for the New York Times and Vice, among others. Police say Russian soldiers opened fire on his car while he was being driven across a checkpoint.
The first thing that went through my head, we lost another journalist.
It was clear indicated Russians are not looking at their targets.
You didn't know where the front lines were. It wasn't a war, it was an invasion. The Russians were targeting journalists.
The front line each hour is moving as Russian forces advance on the Ukrainian capital.
We continued on.
In Irpin, and they start now preparing for defense of the city.
Fixers play an important, critical role for us. Wherever you go, you give you the information and intel that they're hearing. Often in war zones, it can be sometimes hard to find people like that.
Sasha Kushneva became our de facto person on the ground in Ukraine. She just got stuff done.
Yeah, I knew her work from various different parts of Ukrainian life, and I trusted her.
Asha, myself, and Pierre in the back. We thought we were going 5 minutes around the corner to film these abandoned villages. There was a bombed-out gas station. Filmed that for a little bit. Said, do you want to go see a little bit further? And so we went a little bit further. Interviewed some Ukrainian soldiers who were there.
The sounds of shelling is constant just outside here in Kyiv. These towns...
We were filming outside one building that had been hit badly. We heard shelling in the background. And that sounded about, I'd say, 20 miles away. It wasn't in the vicinity. So it wasn't a huge worry at the time.
I'm Benjamin Hall, reporting from outside Kyiv for Fox News.
We quickly finished up what we were doing and we got out, and we came up to a checkpoint. Nobody at the checkpoint, just 3 concrete barriers, so the car would have to stop to go around them. Just as we approached the first barrier, the first shell landed. About 30 yards in front of us, big explosion. Immediately, Pierre shouts very quickly, reverse, reverse, get backwards. The Ukrainians who were driving couldn't get into reverse. And then out of nowhere, the second one lands. I went black at that point. I say black, it was like a death. I mean, I wasn't just concussed, I was out. And out of nowhere, I just hear my daughter's voice, Honor, and Honor just says to me, Daddy, you've got to get out of the car. You've got to get out of the car. I come to. I'm all confused, but I open my eyes straight away. I move to the door to get out of the car, and just as I get outside the car, the third one hits the car itself. I think I was out for a little bit. And I wake up. First thing I knew, I was in trouble. I was on fire, and I had to stop that. So I'm rolling around, and I'm hitting my legs. I'm trying to get it out, and I'm looking at myself, and I'm bleeding from the head. My leg is off. It's dangling off below the knee. The first thing I hear is Pierre saying, "Don't move, don't move." Russian drones.
Pierre had managed to get out of the car and was lying about 20 feet away on the ground, sort of down a little dip at the side of the road. And Benji somehow got out of the car. They were talking.
I said, "Pierre, I'm really badly injured, Pierre. I gotta go." He said, "Don't move, the Russians." And I sat there for a while. I tried my phone. There was no cell phone reception. So I'm just sitting there, like a bloody wreck. Didn't think I was gonna die. I didn't think I was gonna get stuck. I didn't even feel that the injuries were too bad. I knew they were terrible and the leg was gone. But I knew I was going home and I was gonna find a way home. Pierre was just lying maybe 5 feet from me, and he didn't look injured. No blood, he didn't say anything about an injury to me. The car drove past, the first car we'd seen in the last hour. I said, "Pierre, a car," and he said, "It's the Russians." And I said, I have to go, Pierre, I'm badly injured. And I started dragging myself up towards where the car had passed. The adrenaline at this point meant I wasn't feeling the pain. It was just find a way of getting home, no matter what. And I was pulling myself up, and maybe 10 minutes later, maybe less, that car came back. And I just remember waving, screaming at them, and they saw me. We were saved, you know?
That was beginning to feel unusual. I'd sent him several messages and I could see that they weren't read. But I wasn't worried. I remember very clearly that day not being worried at all.
I get a with his eyes blacked out and his mouth blacked out. There's been an attack. Something really bad has happened. To call Alicia, but I can't call her with this little amount of information. I need to know if he's alive to start with. So I said, "Where did he get that photo from?" And he said, "It's on the Ukrainian logistics group for journalists. This is the person who runs it, sends her a message." So I send this lady a message and I say, "I'm Rick Findler, I'm a family friend of Benjamin Hall. Do you have any information about what's happened?" She says, "Yeah, there's been an attack. Benji's been found. That's all we know."
Through saying 2 dead, 1 injured Fox. And that sort of shocked me, and I wasn't able to speak for the first 5, 10, 15 seconds. And I just said, "Are you sure?" And the answer was yes.
And then I just burst into tears and put the phone down.
There's been an accident and Benji's critical. And I said, "How critical?" She said, "Very critical." And she said, "Keep praying." And I remember those words, "keep praying." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, where's Pierre? And she said, "He's missing." I said, "Okay."
I got a phone call from Suzanne Scott, CEO, and she said that they had been missing for 5 hours. And I thought, not a big deal, he's been missing before. I figured, and I said that to Suzanne, I said, "I'm sure they're just hunkered down because curfew's coming, and I'm sure they'll be fine." And that's what I really believed, because Pierre had 9 lives. He always came back. He always came back, whether it was with shrapnel in him or being kidnapped or whatever, he always came back.
Sure, they could be hiding out in a building. Sure, Pierre knows his way on the ground. He could have scooped Sasha up and they could be in a ditch somewhere. But call me pessimistic. After decades of fighting in the war, I thought the worst.
And then I heard on the news that there was going to be a curfew for 36 hours in Kiev. And I thought, okay, if he's hurt and he's lying in a ditch somewhere, wounded, he's not going to survive the cold and a 36-hour curfew. So I started calling everybody I knew and messaging them to say, help, my husband's missing. Find him, find my husband, find Pierre.
Pierre was always with Benji. And the fact that he was missing, I was like, it didn't make sense. Like, how could he be missing? Straight away, I called Rick.
My phone rings and it's Alicia. And I'm like, Christ, this is going to be pretty heavy. So I answer it, and Alicia is inconsolable. I said, this is what we know. He's in hospital. He's alive. So let's just try and concentrate on that, because your mind just always goes to the worst case scenario.
He was just so calm. And he said, okay, you know what? He found out.
I kind of just sidestepped all those emotions, because there was plenty of other people that were going through a lot worse than I was. It was time for me to try and get information about him and that I could relay to Alicia.
After they found out where Benjamin is, they went searching for Pierre and Sasha.
I got another phone call from Suzanne Scott to say that he was still missing and they hadn't found him, and that they'd had to call off the search because of curfew. And then I got really, really worried.
You know, deep down, you feel these things. Your intuition is telling you, look, if they haven't been found in the next hour, 2 or 3, the chances of finding them are very slim.
March 14th, I'm sitting in our booth in the Pentagon. The Fox booth is on a hallway with all the other television networks.
Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby had come in to talk to me when a French journalist came running down the hall. She said, Jen, was your team hit in Kyiv? I called Jay Wallace, the president of news at Fox, and I just said, Jay, has our team been hurt? Was Benji hurt? And he said, do you know who was with him? I said, Pierre. The belief was that Benji had survived and nobody knew where he was. Nobody knew where Sasha and Pierre were. So I said, do you want me to help? And he said, yes. So I think, who do I know who's in Ukraine who can help? And I remembered my good friend, Sarah Verardo.
I'm Sarah Verardo, CEO of the Independence Fund and founder of Save Our Allies. Save Our Allies is a global rescue group that works to help Americans and our allies that are in contested areas around the globe.
During the Afghan withdrawal, she had a team of people that managed to get 12,000 Afghans out of Afghanistan.
Jennifer Griffin called me on March 14th and she said, do you have a team in Ukraine? And I said, yes, we have the very best people you can imagine. We have someone named Sea Spray.
Sea Spray is probably one of our nation's top extraction experts.
Sea Spray is just an incredibly talented individual who has the ability to just provide a level of expertise that is near impossible to find.
Sea Spray has spent a lifetime working in the shadows. He prefers to not have his identity revealed.
We had just purchased some ambulances to do a mobile medical mission and start going deeper into Ukraine, and that's when that call came in. Sarah had said, hey, there's a team that's in Ukraine that has gone missing. Can you find them? It's like, absolutely. We already had the team in the room, and we had Dr. Jadek.
Hi, I'm Dr. Richard Jadek, retired Navy surgeon.
And we had my teammate and best friend, Bo.
My name is Bo White. I'm a former pararescueman in Army Special Operations.
All we knew was there was a
news correspondent that had been injured, with a picture of a badge that had been blacked out, and he was in the Kyiv region. That's enough to get started.
I learned that the New York Times had sent a reporter and photographer the day before into the same area outside Kyiv, Horinka. He suspected that the Azov brigades had taken our team on a very similar route, and so he described to me a burnt-out furniture store that was on a certain corner. I was feeding all of this information to Seaspray.
We started exercising literally everything in our arsenal, from trying to trace their cell phones and figure out the last known locations, to reaching out to our network on the ground and asking them to go around to all the clinics and hospitals and see if they had been admitted anywhere, all while we started driving.
Crossing into Ukraine in the dark, surreal. I just remember the lines of people coming out.
We were constantly reassessing our routes. New information was coming out. The battlefield was changing. Ground was being lost, ground was being gained, and so it kept us on our toes.
There was no less than 90 checkpoints between Lviv and Kyiv. There was a lot of chaos between checkpoints, and whether or not you went through the right one, it could cause so many delays.
The team there, they made sure to also have a quick response force in, ready and waiting.
I had individuals from Mighty Oaks, Chad Robichaud. You had Dakota Myers, Medal of Honor recipient in that ambulance as well, all waiting and shadowing and risking their lives.
Jock had located Benji. He was at the Border Guards Hospital in Kyiv, and it was a target of the Russians. I turned to Kirby and he said, "Jen, the president gave a directive. We can't go into Ukraine." And I said, "Yes, but if I can get them to the border with Poland, can you get permission for them to be treated at Landstuhl?" Those military facilities are reserved for US troops. You can't just be taken there as a civilian. So John Kirby immediately went to the Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, and began the process of getting permission. Lloyd Austin didn't hesitate.
I kind of just went upstairs, shut the door, and just waited. About 2 o'clock in the morning, Suzanne called, and she said, "He's out of surgery, he's conscious, but he's lost his leg." And I remember just thinking, oh, thank goodness. We can deal with that, that's absolutely fine.
One thing that was going through my mind this whole time is when Benji and I went to Libya, I'd sent an email to Tim Hetherington that day saying, "We'll see you in 24 hours. And then we got told that Tim had been killed. And someone said, "Even the cool guys get hit." And that just rang in my head when Benji got hit. And I mean, I'll only say this once, but Benji's cool as hell, right? And that just hit home so much. Even cool guys get hit.
I asked her, "Is he by himself?" She said, "Jock's with him."
Jock doesn't want to be interviewed about the evacuation. I think it's too painful for him.
We eventually make it up to the hospital.
And as soon as we got in, I linked up with the orthopedic surgeon who was kind of running the show for Ben. And he spoke perfect English, had trained in the UK.
Benjamin was brought to us from another hospital. He has got already amputated his right leg, and there were signs of compartment syndrome on his left leg. There was a great risk of air attack on the hospital.
He was in the operating room with an AK-47, and when he would leave Ben, he would go out and patrol the perimeter.
Almost every night I had a duty with a weapon, but when the patients were, I did my work. I did surgery.
I had reached back out to Jennifer Griffin, and I said, "He's stable, but he's in a military target in an area that's getting bombed right now, and he needs further medical care in the next 24 to 48 hours. We need to move now."
I open my eyes, I finally wake up and I'm in the hospital room. And I assume that I'm in Russia. I think I've got to get out of here. how am I going to escape? How am I going to get home? Of course, the leg had come off. I had big metal poles sticking out of me.
I do remember getting a call from Suzanne and Jay. They basically said, do you want to move him? What do you think? My instinct said that he needed to move, and so I said, I think you should move him.
So many injuries become worse once you start to transport.
Sea Spray and I said, will it kill him to move him? Probably not. We're moving. We're not good to be here.
Someone comes up to me, walks into the room quickly with my State Department badge.
I said, hey, Ben, I'm Dr. Jadek, Rich Jadek. I'm here to help get you out of here.
He says, Benji, you want to go? And I just say straight away, let's go.
He goes, how about right now?
I'm gonna get his head.
He offered me a way out when I was going home. And if you asked me if I was going to crawl out of there, I would have crawled out of there, whatever it took.
Ben was in really bad condition, so we started working out which extraction plan would work the best.
You couldn't fly him out. The airspace was contested. Any helicopter would have been shot down. The roads were pockmarked from Russian artillery and missiles.
I didn't want to drive because I was worried that the shrapnel in his neck would sever something. At that time, I had received a call from Dave, a phenomenal military officer.
Lieutenant Colonel Dave is a decorated Green Beret who had more than a dozen deployments. He was positioned in Poland as a partner with the Polish Special Operations Command and government as part of this Ukrainian effort.
He's an incredible special operations tactician. He has a ton of experience, a ton of heart, and he will lay his entire almost 20-year career down to do the right thing.
Dave hit up Sea Spray and said, hey, I might have a solution for you. The Polish Prime Minister was going to be having a meeting in Kyiv. There's a train leaving tonight going back to Poland from Kyiv.
Dave knew that this was a secret mission, but the only way to get Benji out was to get him on the Polish Prime Minister's train.
He said, hey, I think I have an option. If we get the right approvals in place from the Pentagon, the Polish Special Operations Command, the ambassador, the administration, and all these things that normally take months, if we can do that in the next couple hours, I think you have a ride out.
So begins a story that you wouldn't believe it if Hollywood tried to tell it.
Despite security dangers, the prime ministers of Poland, the Czech Republic, and Slovenia went by train to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky in Kyiv, a visit not sanctioned by the European Union.
The prime minister's meeting ended 6 hours early.
We were concerned at the time we were actually going to miss the train window because the prime minister's not going to wait.
I'd been reached out to by one of the Polish Special Operations operators who said, you're good to get on the train, everything's in place, but I can't guarantee you're going to make it here. If you don't leave now, you guys won't make it.
We started packaging up Ben and getting him ready to move via the ambulance for the link up at the train station, which is an event in and of itself.
Right. And the phone. The phone.
The only thing he ever really talked about was he wanted to know at all times where his phone was.
The phone.
She's bringing him. He wanted to talk to his girls.
You good?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yep.
Just go ahead, keep moving.
We're starting to move the ambulance chock full of, Ben, Doc, Rich, Jacques, myself, Sea Spray, and we're driving through the city that the streets are dead empty.
That drive through Kyiv to the railway station, trying to get there before the Polish Prime Minister left, was one of the hardest parts.
This is all real, man.
Every single checkpoint, they thought that we were the Russians.
These checkpoints are extremely hostile because it's after curfew. Nobody's supposed to be out moving.
I assume they're not going to want to. Yeah, probably turn the battery terminal off as soon as you can.
The guns were up at the ambulance as if we were invading. They didn't believe I was injured.
They were poking at Ben's wounds. I mean, they were that suspect of us.
The checkpoints pulled all of his bandages back. They saw the condition he was in and would let us go, but then we started all over again at the next checkpoint.
Every checkpoint we went to, and there was multiple checkpoints, the same song and dance.
After all the checkpoints, we finally make it to the train station.
I lay down on one of the benches in this little cabin.
He was in a lot of pain and never complained. Not when we carried him, not any of it.
And my mind wouldn't stop. I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't stop thinking, non-stop, non-stop. And that was just 10 hours of focus. Keep going, keep getting there.
Early hours next morning, I got information that they found Pierre's body in Kiev's city morgue.
My heart stopped. All I could see was that amazing handlebar mustache and grin. It didn't seem possible. It didn't seem real.
Once the police arrived and our guys were allowed in, they reached out and said, 100% confirmation it is Pierre. Yeah. All I said was okay and put the phone down. I just could not do anything. I was paralyzed. I'm gonna take a break. He was one of the two people who knew some of my secrets, and took them to grave. I've informed the bosses of the findings. They've asked me to take part in a call where we were going to break the news to Michelle, Pierre's wife.
Pierre was my soulmate. I just keep thinking he's gonna come home. And he's not gonna come home. He's gone.
She cried, but she was also composed. She wanted to know what we were planning to do, what the next steps are, what our plan is.
He's my husband, and I'm going to go and get him.
Pierre Zakrzewski, or Zach as many called him, has been with Fox for years, in and out of war zones.
On the run, the gunmen are coming closer. Pierre, let's go, grab the sticks.
Before Ukraine, Pierre was on the ground in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria. He covered conflicts between countries and helped us report from the middle of riots. We offer our deepest condolences to all who knew Pierre and all who loved him. We also send our condolences to the family of journalist Alexandra Kushanova. Sasha, as she's known, was just 24 years old. She was serving as a consultant, helping our teams navigate the city, gather news, speak with sources. Our correspondents and producers say she was hardworking, funny, kind, and brave.
I was completely destroyed at that point. It was something crushing in every single way. Sasha meant the world for me, and losing her made my world so much more.
We couldn't have done most of what we did without her.
The inside of the European.
Okay. Across the bridge.
Yeah.
She had amazing contacts, she had an amazing sense of humor, she was vivacious, she was great.
The fact that she is no more is something that doesn't just strike you and leave. It's something that keeps on coming as a point of pain, as a point of that profound sadness when you feel that a huge part of your life is no more.
She was a DJ. She was an artist. She was young, stylish. We had this joke where She'd always be really nicely dressed underneath her flak jacket, and it was like, you're looking combat chic. Pierre and Sasha were fun to work with.
Happy birthday, Sfia! Woohoo!
Even remembering that video is cuts deep. But again, it's also the moment where they laughed, so smiled, and Pierre joked as always, you know, Sasha always smiling, that unforgettable smile, and that's something that is impossible to forget in every way.
So many people loved Sasha, and I don't think that I really understood how many until I went to her funeral. And you saw all of these really interesting people show up. She was part of a community.
Too much emotion to remember the words. It was basically something that rips your heart out, knowing that this is goodbye.
Turned our attention to how to return Pierre to his wife, Michelle.
And it was all a little bit of a blur the next couple of days because we were trying to get him out.
This was still a war zone. Americans, getting permissions and to cross borders with a casket is not easy.
I said that I would want to go and retrieve his body, to which Michelle said, I'm going in with Dragan.
If I have to go into Kiev and drag him out by my teeth, I will.
So we flew to Krakow.
Getting Pierre out of Kyiv became another journey in and of itself. The Ukrainian driver of the hearse, which our security team had rented, he didn't have the paperwork to leave.
Seaspray had offered that the team was standing by ready to help.
I don't think we felt like we could really take a deep breath because really the mission wasn't over.
So we refitted the trucks and started to make our way back in. And we took custody of Pierre.
One of the security guys had managed to find an Irish flag from an Irish dance troupe in Kyiv.
They draped it over the coffin, and it was lit up in the back, so it was like, had this kind of like holy light.
You know, Pierre was an Irish citizen, and so to have the Irish flag draped over his casket meant a lot to his family.
We went to a local morgue where Mish wanted to see him.
I needed to see him. I needed to see it was Pierre with my own eyes. And it was Pierre.
We spent about half an hour, 45 minutes looking at him and talking about him.
We stood around the coffin with a bottle of Jameson's whiskey.
Hey, Mish, we just made it into the Turkana Chalabi Desert here. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Rough riding, but fun, 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 fun. Love you!
We toasted his health. And his life. It's okay. Identify him at the morgue in Dublin. I dressed him as an Afghan because that was his favourite country in the world.
In Dublin, I got in a taxi, and the taxi driver asked me why I was there, and I told him, and he said, oh, that Pierre, he was a hero. The whole of Ireland knew about him.
We had his funeral in Foxrock at their local church. I specifically chose a photo of Pierre that I'd taken of him that was really cheeky and showed his real side of him.
Speaking at Pierre's funeral was such an honor. There were people there that had known Pierre longer than I had, and all of us were dealing with the grief and the shock and the horror of what happened.
He was better than the best of all of us combined.
He wanted to be behind the camera telling the stories, not being the story.
Michelle is his lifelong partner. They had a great, great love affair. So when I saw her in Ireland, it broke my heart.
He was closest to Carola, his little sister, and her husband Sean, because they live not far from where we do in London, and they have 2 little boys. And he would make excuses so that he could go round to their house and give them their bedtime story or give them their bath.
Jingle bells, jingle Batman. How does it go?
His family adored him. Absolutely adored him.
We crossed the border to Poland. Jen Griffin had worked very closely with the Pentagon, so we were met by a US Black Hawk. And then we were then passed on to the Americans.
They sent me a video. I just see the helicopter lift up.
Ben's father was evacuated by Americans. And so it was an emotional thing for Ben to be in the same situation.
1, 2, 3, go.
When I knew that he was alive and that he was in Germany, I was sending him voice notes and video.
Morning, mate. Rick Findler here.
Just something to keep him entertained, because the poor guy's just lying there, you know.
There was quite a serious accident.
I'm quite an annoying person, so I wanted to keep that annoyance by just really irritating him with messages.
Everyone else in the kitchen at the time is fine.
Gosh, Rick. I can't even begin to describe Rick.
I didn't go to the hospital. I'm a little bit more hardcore than you.
Sorry, it's the only time I get emotional is when I think about certain people who have been so kind to us.
Sorry. Rick. Rick is amazing. He absolutely stepped in when Benji has been away. Didn't need to be asked.
There are some people who you can trust with your life and who you turn to in some of the dark times. He was there the day after this happened, holding my children, doing whatever he could.
I flew to Landstuhl to see Benji. Oh, you just don't notice all the injuries. He just looked like Benji, even though he had tubes coming out, and he was typical Benji, so positive, smiling.
It was one of the few times I cried. It was like everything I was trying to do was get home, get back to my family. You realize that that's what everything's about. You know, it's about family. And I said I'm sorry. I said I'm really sorry.
There was a decision made at Landstuhl to send him to Brooke Army Medical Center, which has a very good burn unit, the best in the military.
Just be very careful, he's in a lot of pain.
All right, prepare to move. All right, you good? You guys good?
They put me in a C-17 and they strapped me to a metal plate, and then they put all these things on top of me, like these baggage and these pipes. For 24 hours I was strapped to this thing and I couldn't move.
Well, it's been about days long travel on these long flights.
I was in there just thinking, I can't do this much, this is awful. And I didn't know what my legs were like. I was just in a bad place.
Well, we just got to San text.
It was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when Dr. Jen Gurney and I met Benji on the flight.
He came straight onto the plane, looked at me then and there, and he basically said, we got a plan for you, don't worry, we're here.
We understood that this was blast injury in the face of this mortar attack and in a very dirty environment.
Prepare to lift. Lift.
Who's pulling out?
Got it. You good? You good? You good? You good? You good?
From then on, it moved very quickly. The operations happened straight away.
He was still critical in that initial phase. He had about a 17% burn, already had an amputation on his right leg, partial foot amputation on his left leg.
The middle aspect of his foot had literally been blown apart, and then his left hand was missing the whole middle portion. Some of these wounds had become infected given the blood loss and the long evacuation process.
I had this big operation last night, one of the many that I'm having, to regain my legs and my limbs and my life, really. I just feel so comfortable where I am right now, so comfortable speaking to the family and knowing that we've got a plan, path out ahead, and that things are getting better. I just feel really good today, and I think today is day one of the start of a video diary from me.
I decided that if I ever had a bad day, if ever I was starting to feel a bit sad, just to tell people, which is not against my natural instinct, is to do that, but turns out it works wonders.
Today is Thursday, the 21st of April. I'm in a really good mood, mainly because I had my operation yesterday and all seemed to went well, but also because I just got off the phone with Alicia, which makes me feel better than ever. And I just saw a video from all the girls at home that I love very much.
I love you, Dada. Hi, Daddy. I love you. I love you so much, and I really want you to come back this very moment.
The doctors think that a patient recovers best when their family are around them, and that we should all move and live there. But we have 3 children, and the priority through all of it was to make sure that they were not worried or upset.
Hi, Daddy. I hope your operation was good.
I didn't want them to see me badly injured. I just didn't think that that would be a healthy thing for a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old to see. So my decision was to get better.
And so it's just important to keep reminding them that I'm here, that I'm coming home, not as soon as I would like, but I am coming home.
He needs someone there. He needs someone that basically advocates for you as a patient, and if you need water, or if something happens in the middle of the night, or you know, whatever it is, you've got that person there. And that's where Jock came in. Being Jock, you know, no frills, was just like, yes, okay.
Okay. My new hand has been delivered to me, and look at that. If you have any doubts about what these guys do when you're asleep, don't be. The rest of me feels all a little bit strange. But Jock has been saving my day, because I feel totally out of it.
Jock was right there at the beginning when Benji was located. He was right there along his side when he was transported out of the war zone.
Jock then proceeded to spend months by Benji's side in the hospital as he went through every surgery.
Jock never left Ben's side. He was just a sweetheart. I don't know how else to say that. It's not very manly. Jock was just Johnny on the spot.
Jock's like a father figure in many ways, you know? He was there every minute of every day that I was injured. I couldn't have got through it without him. Jock was standing behind me the times that I fell, and out of nowhere, these hands were there to grab me, lift me up. Jock was there when I cried, told me everything was going to be okay.
Ben had goals to do a lot and go back to work and all that stuff, but we have to start with standing up, walking, getting stronger.
The first day I got a leg, I took 1 or 2 steps on it, loved it. Every day was about doing more, just getting better.
It just feels like a corner has been turned, that I've reached a point that I, to be honest, at some point wasn't sure would make it.
There were days that were more challenging than others. Benji would routinely look at me and just say, okay, Doc, what do you got? This may be a bad day, but I'll have a good day tomorrow.
Boy.
And that was Benji's whole affect throughout this entire process. He is one of the most resilient individuals I have ever met.
On the day this happened, and I was sitting on the ground and I had no leg and I couldn't reach anyone and the phones weren't working, there was one thing I thought, and that was I had to go home. Whatever it takes, I'm going back to see the family. And that's what every day's been about. And that's today. Nice to see you, man. I know. We thought we'd come and say our last farewells. Yes.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Just remember texting Benji with a, hey brother, I'm going to miss you dearly on a daily basis. Because you're the ultimate human return on investment.
See you later.
told my eldest daughter, Anna, that I'd be home for her birthday.
So in Benji's mind, he set that as his goal.
I was getting on a plane no matter what. I was going home.
I called Benji. I said, are you coming back next week? And I said, can I come? And he said, absolutely. Alicia and I got in the car and drove to the airport. You could tell Alicia, I know Alicia speaks like a mile a minute, right? But this, you could tell that her energy, her nervous energy, because she just would not shut up, like just talking. But what was interesting is the closer we got to the airport, the quieter Alicia got. And then you could tell that it's starting to hit home.
There was that moment when I was sitting on the plane, I was waiting to see Alicia. Kind of felt like a first date, you know? Like I was so nervous about it, and I didn't know what to say to her.
She was like looking out of the window, and then she had a couple seconds just to herself. She just sat there in the car on her own, just sort of head in her hands for a few seconds, you know, just to sort of gather herself.
I just remember we just hugged. I cried. Because we'd made that decision not to be together. We'd made the decision for her to stay with the daughters. So that was bringing back together everything that I'd fought for, that we'd all fought for. Incredible.
When he landed and I went to collect him, you just felt like, oh, okay. You just feel like a huge sense of relief. We've done it.
The joy that Benji's landed in the UK, it was the whole celebration of everything that Benji had gone through, that Alicia had gone through, that the girls had gone through, and it was all just in this one moment. It was lovely.
Ready?
Yeah. I know they'd been told not to run up, but of course Anna ran up and grabbed me and wouldn't let go. And Iris as well, sat down, just held on to them. Iris was a little bit more cautious, and I was a little bit worried because she just held on to Alicia for a while. And then she just, slowly, bit by bit, she came a bit closer, She realized that it was me, that I was really back.
Him coming home, in a way, feels like nothing has changed, even though everything has changed. And I think that's, you know, credit to him, credit to the kids. They took it in their stride. They're not bothered by anything. They're so proud of Daddy's robot leg. It's just a different way of life.
Every day since I've been back, like the last 3 months, has been just as amazing. Every morning I wake up and I go downstairs, I feel the same joy. It's something I didn't feel before. I don't know what the change is exactly, but it's like a physical love, like I feel it physically. And that's just nothing but them now.